Okay, people, today we're going to step into the realm of Super 7's Dungeons and Dragons Ultimates. Dungeons and Dragons! Special thanks to BigBadToyStore for collaborating with me on these. I was interested in these too, because I have the Hasbro Dungeons and Dragons cartoon figures. Now that piece is too big to be lost to the carpet monster. Come on now. I was looking in the wrong spot. I thought it went over there. It went over there. Anyway, I have the full set of Hasbro's Dungeons and Dragons figures, and I'm happy with those. They're not perfect, but they're in my scale, and they're close to what I wanted. But they only did the main crew, and then Dungeon Master and Venger. So when it comes to secondary characters, building up the cast, the shelf, I guess I'm going to have to rely on Super 7 because it doesn't look like Hasbro's coming back around to the cartoon figures. That's why I only grabbed Shadow Demons and Dekkion and not Hank and Sheila, because I have a Hank and Sheila. And I do know that Ultimates is larger scale. This Dekkion will probably tower over the kids, but if I have all the kids up front and all the bad guys behind back, because Venger's super tall, you know, so I see it in my mind's eye. I'm just hoping it works out in plastic form. Looking at the package, there is the entrance to the ride, and you have the Dungeons and Dragons logo down here. Window through the mouth showing what you get for the most part. There's the two demons, there's some accessories, there's Dekkion with some accessories. There may be some stuff hidden behind certain points. I need to hold up my tripod. On the sides, it's just a continuation of that artwork. Same thing on the top with the horns coming back, but they do have the Ultimates logo up here. On the bottom, there's your choking hazard, may contain small parts. Don't put the big bony character in your mouth. Then on the back, you get a very role-playing bio, and somebody who understands all the numbers and everything can probably decipher this, but to me, it just says Shadow Demons, well, okay, flyby attack, great fortitude, and darkness enhancement, and dark vision. Okay. I can make out some of it. Dekkion, intelligent, exceptional, alignment, neutral, evil, size, medium. But then it doesn't have the cool stuff like this one does. It has all kinds of powers, and this is just, hey, this guy's made of bone. But let's get these open. Which one am I gonna do first? Let's do the Shadow Demons. For some figures that are very, very simple, they are pretty damn nifty. And we only have to go over one for the most part because they're both the same body. They only have different faces. Taking a look at that body, there isn't a lot of definition, which it shouldn't be. It's a Shadow Demon. In fact, this is a little too visible from what we saw in the cartoon. That was way more transparent, you know. Shadow. And while this is a translucent material, you can see it better out here on the wings. The body and the limbs and the head are thicker, so it's not allowing as much light to come through. But that does fade down to translucent material down here at the bottom where it attaches to the base, which is also just clear plastic. You can also see that in the hands because it goes thinner. There's a little bit of translucency to it. Now, don't get me wrong, the whole figure being more like this would be awesome, but the black also hides the joints. If it was more clear, you'd be seeing pegs and the dumbbell joint and the ball down here and the peg here. And I guess they opted to go for a more shadowy feel. Not that shadowy feel, this shadowy feel. So it's cool from top to bottom. You have the demon wings up behind them, very bat-like with the spike up here. You have the body that is slender but muscular, very sleek, and then I dream of genies down to the base. And then look at it in profile. The bottom has a twisty curl to it, then it comes up and wisps to the front, and then almost hunches up here, kind of like flying monkeys. In fact, I get that same feel, you know. Then there's the face, at least on this one. And this one has the evil eyes going up, kind of symbiote Spider-Man style, but with eyebrows that are the same color, or horns, whatever those may be. The face on the other one has more human-shaped eyes with those same eyebrows, horns, whatever they are above that. I like that there's a difference. If you bought multiple sets, you'd get multiple demons. Then all you'd have to do is change the pose around in order to get a different feel for each of the figures. Going over articulation, on the back, the wings are on ball joints, so you can flip them up, you can bring them down, you can go out, you can go back, you can go forward. There's a dumbbell joint up here at the head. I'm not quite sure the head's supposed to pop off, but I just kept pulling until it came off. You know me. Some up, some down, little bit of tilt, left, right, hell, all the way around. It is a demon. Pin coming out to the shoulder rotates around, does hit the wing, but you can get that out of the way. Go all the way around, and then a hinge that goes up to about right there. Bicep swivel, single hinge at the elbow only comes up to 90. Swivel at the wrist with a hinge in and out. Dumbbell joint mid-torso, ball at the waist, crunches to about right there. Arcs back some, tilt, rotation, and there is nothing below that, just the end of the peg that goes in the hole of the base. Which I guess would count for accessories, but the real accessories are alternate hands, and from what I can tell, they're just different shapes. Out of the package, there is this one, and there is this one on the figure, and then there is this one, and focus, that one. Then there's a more relaxed hand, and almost another relaxed hand, and then almost a trigger finger hand, and then another just kind of thing. I see no reason to swap these out. They're just different poses, but if you want to, you can pull that out and that plugs right in. And then there was Dekkion. All right, this is cool, but it almost skews into the cartoon realm too much. Okay, let me take that back. Well, no, I'm not gonna take it back. That's what it does, but that's what it's supposed to do. It's not fair to judge these against the Hasbro Dungeons and Dragons figures because Hasbro put their own spin on them. Yes, they look a lot like the original cartoon, but almost brought into the 2010s. A kind of an anime feel to them. Super 7 kept it 80s style. Maybe it's the design of Dekkion himself. After looking at the Shadow Demons, which are kind of ubiquitous, they're kind of just plain, they could fit in any collection. I would not kick this out of Marvel Legends or even Star Wars. But this is undisputably Dungeons and Dragons cartoon. And again, I started off sounding like that was a negative, but it's not. It's just how it is. It's very, very cartoon style. Although it does get a little mean the closer you get. That simple eyeball with just white and a black center is very effective. Especially since the other one doesn't have an eyeball. It's just a socket. So I guess that makes it even more scarier. But then there's the nose and the big old teeth and the kind of cracks to the bone in places. And that just continues down to the limbs. The arm bone's connected to the forearm bone, and then the thigh bone is connected to the, well, the boot, looks like. It's chunky with bulbous joints, but again, leaning hard into the animation. It's not without detail. In between, there is some ring mail, and it looks very nicely sculpted with some chunks missing in places, and it comes down and hangs down on the arm a little bit, and you get down here, and you can see the random ring in places, along with some breaks and some indentations, some dents, like it's hanging between the ribs or it's been hit with a weapon of some kind. It's torn up here on the right arm, and then again with a ring hanging out and unlinked, and there's some hits, and it goes all the way around to the back. And I do believe there's a wash to that to bring out the detail. The shoulder pad is a little more simple, kind of a cloth look to it with a gold trim going around. Well, I say cloth, that's probably some kind of metal, or it's supposed to be some kind of metal because it matches the helm with that same dry brush effect, the white on top of the gray, and then there's more gold, along with the spike up on top, you know, in case he wants to. That shoulder flap is a soft material, so it will get up and out of the way of the arm coming around. Some fairly simple brown straps crisscrossing the chest, and that goes around and does the same thing on the back. The gloves, and then comes down to the straps on the boots that's holding on the front piece of armor. And again, that makes me think that this is supposed to be metal too, because there's the dry brush, the whites, the grays, the gold. Then the boots are a dark navy gray with the little toe points sticking out, and I like that because it brings another color into the overall scheme. Oh, forgot the belt. It's just bulbs, studs going around on a band that match the color of the bone. So that's kind of neat, a piece of the wardrobe tying into the body itself. And I like the proportions. The head being sunk down a bit gives it a very look. And he's not super muscular because, well, I mean, I guess that would be ribs under there. If this is his arms, these are his legs, and that's his face. It's got to be just bone for the hips and crotch and chest and spine. It does kind of sink back at the waistline. Couple things though. The left arm lays nicely down beside him. This part, the ring mail, the shoulder, it can hinge out, and then it hinges all the way down. The right arm doesn't seem to do that. It sticks out a bit. In fact, you can see part of the hinge right there. Going back to the left, no hinge. The whole thing sinks into the torso. On the right, I cannot get that to go in. It still hinges up, but another thing you notice, see how the arm comes out at an angle from the sleeve? When you bring this right shoulder down, even though this doesn't touch where this should be laying right there, the arm goes straight up and down because I don't know if the peg's bent or if they actually sunk it that way. Or maybe he's supposed to look like that with the right shoulder kind of uncomfortably cocked out. I'm actually not sure now that I think about it, but what makes me think that that's not true is that peg showing a little bit right there. It still functions completely. Again, both arms go up and hinge out and hinge back in. It's just noticeable. Another thing that jumps out is looseness to the hips. Now, I can bring them up and they stay in position, or I can push them back and they stay there. They just move a little too easy. In fact, I can do that if I jerk it around back and forth, but it also has no problem standing. It doesn't affect the posing. I'm just pointing it out. I think it's mostly just because of the way it's actually set in there, and then the weight of these boots all the way at the end. Since we're talking about articulation, there is a ball joint at the neck. Can look up, but once you kick it back this far, the neck tries to get caught on the body. So if you push forward, it's pull it in, and then go back to neutral position, because there doesn't seem to be a lot of down. Lots of tilt though. I live to serve, Venger. Pin coming out to the shoulder rotates around, like I said, that pad gets out of the way, and then hinge goes up to there. Bicep swivel, hinge at the elbow, comes up past 90, and then rotates below the elbow. When I first did this, I thought it was at the glove line, but no, it's actually at the joint. Swivel at the wrist with a hinge in and out. Ball joint at the waist, crunches a little, arcs back some, and then very little tilt along with some rotation. I forgot to mention that the mel below the belt is a very soft material, but where they put the cuts is kind of to the back to hide them. There's still a lot of curve here that fights you when you want to bend it really high up. You know, like when the swivel at the hip wants to go to here and then back and then hinges out to there. There's also a swivel on that hinge and swivel, so rotates. Hinge at the knee, kicks up past 90, and then the pin goes down for boot rotation. Ankles are super tight, but goes to there, and then a front-facing pin for rocker. For accessories, we already talked about the neutral face. There's also a screaming head, and while I don't usually like these, there's something about the way the jaw juts out that just amuses the shit out of me. And I love the angrier eye here. So, I may have to take this off. I did have to heat it to get it on, and it is very tight on that ball joint, but look at that. Also out of the package, he comes with 2 fists. Pretty easy to pull out. And then you can replace them with a relaxed right hand or a splayed out left, or a tight grip right and a loose grip left. There's the ring of power, which is essentially just a ring. It does have a hell of a glow to it though. I was more excited about the sword and sheath because they just look fantastic. There's gold to the pommel and the guard and parts of the sheath with bright white in between, brown to the grip, and silver to the blade. And yeah, it's fairly simple. There's a circle, there's some curls, there's a little bit of work right there on the blade, but man, it just goes into the sheath. I said go into the sheath. Doesn't fall out. A little bit of grip when you get to that point, but once you get past that, it's a little loose. It's not gonna be scraping paint off or anything. Better yet, the fingers have some flex to them. They're not super soft, they're not super hard. They just bend enough for you to get the sword in the hand and for it to grip it comfortably. Hey, up and down hinge on a weapon wielding hand. At first I was trying to get the bigger left to go around the grip, and I guess you can put it down there if you want, but then I realized, oh no, that's for holding the sheath. It's a perfect size. Plus they did up and down hinge on that too, so if you want to make it look like he's drawing the sword, you can do that. But then there's also a peg at the top and a hole right there on the side that you can plug into there and just have it out of the way if you want. Can he grip the ring up? Oh, no, that's too big. How about this hand? Kind of flops around inside, but it doesn't just fall out. Dekkion's ready for the fair, win some goldfish or something. Size-wise, the Shadow Demons stand at about 5.5 inches tall, while Dekkion is 7 5/16 to the top of his actual head, and then maybe 7 3/4 to the top of the spike. God, Damn it, Reggie. This is what I was looking for, and I'm okay with this. Now, I am sure that the Ultimates, Hank and Sheila, fit in even better with this Dekkion, but I think of him as a bigger character. Maybe not this large, but it's also more imposing. Plus, in my display, my eventual display that I have in my head right now, the Dungeons and Dragons main cast is going to be in front. So him standing up above, kind of hovering, I think this will work. Shadow Demons fit right in though. They're smaller, so they're not as noticeable as big honkin' Dekkion. Look at him next to the Hasbro Venger. I can get behind this. I'm sure Venger's supposed to be larger in this context, but hey, Super7 hasn't announced theirs yet, have they? Maybe I can replace this side-eyed version. And then have a big freaking Venger to go along with my Hasbro Dungeons and Dragons crew. So at the end of the day, all right, my cartoon Dungeons and Dragons display continues to grow. That makes me happy, especially since at one point I didn't expect it to get any bigger. But you know me, I'm not a super stickler for scale. Dekkion could be smaller with the Hasbro crew, but it's not meant to be that. Ultimates is 7-inch scale. But the way I'm gonna set up my shelf one day, it'll work. But it's also not my main collection. To me, it's something to have, something nostalgic that looks good in figure form from two different companies. I'm just working on the outskirts of that space. Don't forget, Venger and Dungeon Master came with this nice big backdrop. So I've got to fill that up, right? Also, as someone who hasn't bought any Ultimates in a good long while, it's nice to see that they've tightened up the QC. Yeah. I pointed out the loose hips, and some of the joints are a bit tight to bend, but everything else came right out of the package, moving and doing their thing. There wasn't one time that I was thinking, oh, I'm about to break this joint. Oh, there was paint on the elbow joints of Dekkion that kind of shaved off. Thankfully, the plastic underneath isn't too different, but I did get a little flaking there. In fact, I had less issues here than I did with the Hasbro Dungeons and Dragons kids. Take that as you will.